Hello and welcome back to another episode of Math with Sohn. Today we are going to be learning about the midpoint formula. So, let's get into it. Now the midpoint formula looks really big, but it is not big, okay? So don't panic when you see this thing. In fact, it's so big I'm going to write it over here, okay? The key to the midpoint formula is to realize that it is a point. So it is a formula for a point. And now points are x comma y, all right? So we are looking for the point that is here. This is the x value. Right there, that's the x value. And here is going to be the y value, all right? So we have like a little formula for the x value and a little formula for the y value. And the reason these parentheses are really big is because it's just representing a point, okay? The formula is really easy. You add your x's, so x2 plus x1, you add your x's and divide by 2. And you would add the y's and divide by 2. I highly recommend you remember the formula as add x's, divide by 2. Add y's, divide by 2. That's the formula. There's nothing special about it. All right? So, if we have this part right here, and this is our problem, it says find the midpoint given G and H. If that's our problem, then all we need to do is add the x's together, then divide by 2. So I would need to add these two x values together. If you want to label them as x1 and x2, you can, but they're the x values, so all I have to do is add 7 and 9 together. Doesn't matter the order. I could have done 9 plus 7. The formula actually says do 9 plus 7. And divide by 2. Comma. We also have to add the y's together and divide by 2. So label your y's, y2 and y1. But really it's just add -1 and -5 together in either order. -1 plus -5 and divide by 2. Add x together, divide by 2. Add the y's together, divide by 2. You think I've said it enough? I'm going to keep going with it. 9 plus 7 is 16, right? So we have 16 divided by 2. And we would have -1 plus -5 for the y part. Well, that's -6 divided by 2. 16 divided by 2 is 8. -6 divided by 2 is -3. Okay? You can do the x's and the y's together, or you can do them separate. I actually almost recommend doing them separate, and I'm going to do that on this next problem. But all you're doing is adding the two x values and dividing by 2, and then writing it as your point. 9 plus 7 divided by 2 is 8. 9 plus 7, 16, divided by 2 is 8. All right, next one. Find the midpoint given the following. So even though there's this fancy midpoint, again, all you have to do is add the x's together, so we will add -7 plus 3. What is that? It's -4, right? And then we have to divide by 2. We can divide by 2, or we can write this as a fraction. I'm going to actually just write divided by 2 is -2. That's the x value. That's the same thing we did here. I'm going to write it the way we did there. But really, you're going to still end up with -4 divided by 2, which is -2. Same thing. So I found the x value of my point. I need to find the y value of my point by adding the two y values together and dividing by 2. So I have to add -4 y and y plus 4, that's 0. What's 0 divided by 2? Still 0. So my y value is going to be 0. If I do it in the fancy formula, -4, I wrote 0. -4 plus 4 is 0 divided by 2. 0 divided by 2 is still 0. So you can get the midpoint from the formula or from what I've been repeating over and over and over, which is add the x values and divide by 2, and add the y values and divide by 2. So another thing you might be asked to do by me or from any textbook or even on the FSA is figure out what is the missing other endpoint, okay? Here, if we read carefully, it says find the coordinate of A if M is -1, 2, is the midpoint of AB. So what that means is that we are given our midpoint already. And if we are given our midpoint already and we want to find the other endpoint, we just have to think of ourselves as we are halfway there. Let's go the rest of the distance, okay? So if you have to find that, then what I would highly recommend doing is drawing a graph. Okay? If we draw a graph, we could also have drawn a graph for actually finding the midpoint, but for these it works out really well. I'm going to label these 2 points. I'm going to label the point -1, left by 1, up by 2, as point M. And then I'm going to label the point 3, -5. I got to go to the right by 3. 1, 2, 3. Down by 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As B. Okay? Now, I know that I have a line called AB. It's right there. So I'm going from B, and I know that M is in the middle. So if I'm traveling down this line and I know M is in the middle, I'm halfway there. I'm going to have to keep going to eventually get to point A, and it's going to be somewhere way over there. All right? So all I have to do to figure out where that is count. So if we've drawn this correctly, or if you have graph paper, if it's neat, you can just count. How much did we go up? I have to go up that much more. All right? So from here, how much did I go up? I went up by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I've gone up by 7, I have to go up by another 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I got to figure out what that is. So what is that number? It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Apparently it's up by 9. All right, so I figured out that part. I now have to figure out how far did I go over from B to M. So we count how far over we went. So I'm going to use the hash marks up here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I went over by 4. If I've gone over by 4 and I'm halfway there, I have to go over by another 4 to get all the way there. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I would have my point for A. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 away from the origin. So this is -5 on my graph. And my x comma y point would be -5 comma 9. So the way to think about these is you're going from one point to the other. If you're halfway there, do the same slope. If you remember slope, up by this many, over by this many, go up by that many, over by that many. If you have an accurate graph, that's all you have to do. We went up by so many, over by so many, go up by so many, over by so many to get the other endpoint. So for this last problem, it's going to be the same thing that we did for the previous one, where we're going to be given a midpoint and we need to find the other endpoint after given one of them. And it has bigger numbers. That changes nothing. That just means you have to make a bigger graph. Big graph. Very big graph. Mine's off the paper, okay? Don't worry about it. I think that most of it is up here anyways. So I have my XY graph. I am going to start by plotting the midpoint. Point K is the midpoint. It is at -5, 10. So I have to go to left by 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just because you make a bigger graph doesn't mean you want to make your hash marks bigger, because maybe you might need all that space. Up by 10 for the 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there is my point for K. I am now going to plot point L has the coordinate of -8, 6. So I have to do -8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, already counted, 6, 7, 8, -8, 6. So I have to go up by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there is my point for L. And I am knowing that K is the middle of JL. So I know that if I'm going from L and I'm going all the way to J, that I'm halfway at point K. So I'm going this direction. I'm halfway. I just got to keep going, and eventually I'll get to the other point. Okay? So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to count. We're going to count how much did we go up, how much did we go over from L to K, because K is the middle. So we went up by how much? From 6 to 10, we went up by 4. So we went up by 4. We could count it 1, 2, 3, 4. And over by 1, 2, 3 from the -8 to 5. So if we went up by 4 and over by 3 to get to point K, we just have to go up by 4 and over by 3 to get to our last and final destination of apparently J. J is the other endpoint. So what is this point after we've gone up by 4 and over by 3? Well, we got to go up by 4 from 10. So up by 4 from 10 is going to be 11, 12, 13, 14. And over by 3 from -5 is going to be 1, 2, 3. Let me check that again. 1, 2, 3, -2. So it's just a counting game. 1, 2, 3, we're at -2. Up by the 4, we're at 14. We crisscross these lines, we're going to be at, for point J, -2, 14 as our answer. J is equal to -2, 14. Got all this blank space over here. I just felt like using it. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Remember, these are not that bad as long as you're willing to graph them.